We're going to move right into our next discussion. It's going to be a panel discussion really covering something that, two words that I'm sure we've all heard many, many times over the course of the last couple of years, the supply chain. The title of this next panel, Supply Chain Crisis, What We Learned and Where We're Headed. I think that kind of sets the stage, but in the interest of providing a visual of just a reminder of where we've been in these last couple of years, let's take a look at a quick video of some of the headlines that we saw over the course of the last couple of years dealing with these supply chain issues. So again, not only does that video kind of set the stage for the conversation we're about to have here, but man, doesn't it just bring back some warm memories as well of the challenges that we all faced in the last couple of years. And as someone who wrote a couple of those headlines, just wanted to get the news across. I wasn't trying to scare anyone, but did want to make sure that folks were informed, because this is something we were hearing quite a bit about in our office, something I'm sure you all were living and experiencing on a daily basis. So I'm going to invite the panelists to come on stage here behind me as I read off some introductions. This panel is sponsored by EverAg, and appreciate their support of this event. Panelists joining us today are Craig Culver of Culvers Restaurant. Craig is the founder of the restaurant, which he first opened in 1984 in his hometown of Sauk City, Wisconsin. There are now over 800 Culvers franchises across 25 states with over 30,000 team members. Craig retired as the organization's CEO in 2015, but is still involved in the business as board chairman and continues to be the face and champion of the brand. Ladies and gentlemen, Craig Culver. Yeah, come on up. Also participating in the discussion today, Chad Vincent, the CEO of the Dairy Farmers of Wisconsin. Dairy Farmers of Wisconsin is building demand and awareness for Wisconsin's dairy industry. Chad has an extensive marketing, general management, and international background in driving growth at companies. Ladies and gentlemen, Chad Vincent. Last but certainly not least on the panel discussion today, Scott Sexton, the founder and CEO of Dairy.com. Dairy.com is a provider of software, risk management, and market intelligence solutions for the dairy industry. Scott is leading the driving force in digitally connecting the supply chain and empowering it to feed a growing world. Ladies and gentlemen, Scott Sexton. Now we'll make the seamless transition from podium microphone to lapel microphone. Man, this is a good AV team. I appreciate that, folks. But gentlemen, we're going to have about an hour here to have a discussion on all of the various things facing the dairy industry, the supply chain, especially what we learned over the last 2 years. And Craig, I want to start with you from that standpoint, because you've got a very recognizable brand in the food service space, and one that was, that space certainly faced with its fair share of challenges. And I know this is, potentially a bit of a dangerous question, but take us inside your mind when you're seeing all of these various supply chain issues, all the various concerns facing the industry, facing your company. What's going through your mind, and what did you as a company do to adapt?
Well, I'll go back to 2020 in March when we were told to close the dining rooms and such, and we were scared. Everybody was scared. We didn't know what to do. Dining rooms are closed. How are we going to do business? And the first thought that I had and our operators had was, we got to get rid of people. We got to let them go, because we're gonna slow down. And I had a bit of an epiphany. I said, wait a second. We've got a drive-through. we're going to be okay. We just got to take care of our guests as if we were, fully open. And let's not let anybody go. Let's keep our people and let's take care of our guests. And we did that, but us and everybody else, we dipped in sales in a big way for March and April. But in May, we started coming back, and we were so fortunate to have a drive-through. And the lines were, we're the slowest fast food restaurant in the world, by the way. and I'm proud of that. But the lines were long, but we took care of our guests. And the end of the year, we were still up. We were up 5% in comp sales. Well, that carried over into 2021, which we just finished, and we finished 2021 up comparative sales up 18.5%. Our experiences, which you would call transactions, were up 14%. And but to answer your question, we were scared, and it's a mess yet right today. I mean, I talk with our supply chain people all the time, but when it comes to the dairy products, we haven't missed a beat there. We really haven't. You guys have done a great job supporting us and the everybody else, the United States. You've been there. You keep producing, and fortunately, the trucks still get to our places. But it's a mess. Every aspect of supply chain is still a mess, except for the dairy industry. So thank you for that.
Craig, at any point in the last 2 years, have you and the folks that you work with been forced to explore some kind of, I don't know what the right term would be, but maybe menu simplification in reaction to getting some of these ingredients, some of these products that you need?
Well, it's come because of the supply chain disorder. And of all things, chicken. You would think chickens reproduce rather quickly, right? Everybody likes white meat, and all our competitors are putting out a new chicken sandwich and such, and chicken tenders are just terribly popular. And we had to take our buffalo tenders off the menu to supply enough tenders for our regular tenders. But everybody's looking for chicken items to fulfill their menu. But there were other things, our pork tenderloin sandwich as well. We had to take that off for quite a while. But it's work at it every day. When it comes to furniture and equipment and things like that, stainless steel, oh my gosh. And we opened 55 restaurants in 2021. We opened 51 restaurants in 2020 and I'm amazed at that, but somehow or another, our suppliers have pretty much taken care of. But we have had suppliers as well that said, we're going to drop you. And I won't name names at all like that, but we have had suppliers drop us. And we kind of talked about this last week when we were talking. You don't forget those things when somebody says, no, we're not going to take care of you anymore. I doubt if we'll be going back to them at any time soon.
Chad, I want to bring you into the discussion here. Obviously, we just focused a lot on Culvers, and for obvious reasons with Craig being here with us, but kind of zooming out and looking at the broader consumer perspective, what did the supply chain issues that we saw between kind of here in the last 24 months really, what did that teach us about consumer preferences and maybe the need for adaptability within our supply chains?
Wow, it was, there's so many. I could talk for a couple hours on the changes in consumer and what's really going on in the world. Before I get to that though, I want to thank Craig and the Culvers business. I mean, they are running dairy farmers in Wisconsin. We're really the marketing group for the Wisconsin dairy farmers. And you're a strong partner with us. The creative you put out on the TV portraying the cheese process, there's the people that make the cheese, and the farmers, and the way that they care about the quality, they care about the planet, they care about the water and their operations. The way you portray that and get that message out is invaluable, and everybody in this room should be thanking you and your organization for your support of farmers. We really appreciate it. So, so consumers, consumers are surprised. Consumers are changing. I mean, dramatically. I take myself. I mean, I was involved with some research last year, and I take myself back when I was 12 years old. Right, long time, 50 years ago, a long time ago. I tell you what, the things that I was worrying about when I was 12 are not what 12-year-olds are worrying about today. I mean, a young 12-year-old girl is like, I like dairy, but I'm not sure if it's good for the planet, and I'm not sure if it's good, if the animals are really happy, and I'm not. So you're like, when I was 12, I'm like, can I stay out past 7 and ride my bike? It is the level of issues and understanding has gone from when people started thinking about this stuff, typically when they were late high school or in college, they start thinking about these kind of, it's at kids now. So there is a higher level of transparency that is not only requested, but demanded by consumers. They want to know where their food comes from, and are they treating it well, and is it local, and local is that in my state or my county. Honestly, local is, do I know where this stuff comes from, or does it come from a faceless corporation or someplace off a boat somewhere? There's been some major changes in the way they consume products, right, too. So when March happened, all of a sudden people aren't going out as much to Craig's Places and to these other restaurants. They had to learn how to cook at home. They had to run to the grocery store, and when they went to the grocery store, they picked up 5 gallons of milk. They picked up cheese, they picked up everything they had to eat to survive, and dairy was at the top of the list. So that to me, that's a great reminder of, when everything's good, it's easy to complain about a lot of stuff. When the chips are down, look what they go to, and they went straight to dairy. So there's great elements in that.
Chad, I'm on the board of Quick Trip as well, and during that time, their dairy could not keep up.
Right.
Could not keep up with fluid milk.
It's amazing, right? And to me, that warms the heart, because really, we all know that the power of dairy and how good it is, and sometimes people like to pick at that, right? There's competitors out there that want to try and portray us as anything less than wholesome and great for you and great for the planet and great for the environment. And honestly, that's what a lot of what our organization does, is we try and tell those stories, and we bring farmers in this room have been on stage with us or on TV with us telling those stories, and there's nothing more powerful. The other major reason, so people went to the grocery stores, and they're not going to stop going there. All right, they've learned how to cook. They can't wait to get back to the restaurants, but they're going to continue to eat at home, and so that changes the way that they look at food and labels, and they really are reading the labels. They want to make sure they understand what's in this, where does it come from, and they'll do the research on, is this company, do they treat the animals well? Are there anything out there that says anything that's wrong? Right, and I'm sure you guys face that every day. And to me, the third major trend that we see is on the e-commerce side. And that's either people realizing that hey, I can go online and I can order stuff and I can have it delivered to me, so I never have to go out and face the evil world of COVID. Or my 90-year-old father-in-law, who sits at home in a rural Wisconsin, has learned how to go online to Pick and Save, get his order, ship it, drive into town. He opens up his trunk and they put it in there, and he's able to stay safe at 90 years old and not in the greatest health, but able to have product that he can actually order and live a semi-normal life. So that the e-commerce thing, where we thought we were going to be in 5 years, we got to in like 5 months, and that's not going away. The people love the ability to order stuff that they want and have it how they want it. They want it delivered to me. They want it pick up. Do I want to order it and then go walk into Target and pick it up myself? So to me, those are the 3 major trends that are, once again, we can talk. If you want to talk to us, Dairy Farmers Wisconsin, reach out to us. We got more research than you'll ever know. And we really want to make sure that we help tell the stories to help you run your businesses and help the processors run their businesses.
Well, and Chad, you had mentioned the change of the consumer doing more cooking at home and a little bit less restaurant traffic, but really focusing on that cooking at home now that they were sort of forced into it for the last 2 years. The research that you mentioned, what does that tell us in terms of what the consumer is looking to cook? I mean, are they going back to the comfort foods, the more familiar recipes, and how does the dairy industry adapt and maybe kind of work its way in there?
Well, I tell you, it's across the board, right? And it depends on your skills, because you had a lot of young people that have never cooked anything. right? There's a young lady that works at DMI, and she's a early 20-something, and she didn't own a can opener. She goes, none of my friends own a can opener. Why would I own a can opener? I've never had to open a can before, right? So yeah, there's the basics of how do I cook an egg, how do I make a grilled cheese sandwich? But we probably had 5 million incremental hits on our website for recipes of how do I make lasagna? How do I make all these different products? So I think that people, at first it was a shock, and how do I put milk in a bowl and eat cereal? And then how do I cook breakfast? How do I cook lunch? Because how many times have people at home had lunch with a family? Right? That just, in my growing up, that happened every day. Today, before March 20, rarity. So it's across the board, but they really are looking for, transparency and understanding, what do I have? And typing, I have noodles, I have eggs, I have milk, I have cheese, what can I make? To how do I make, filet mignon? So once again, it's across the board, but there is an incredible amount of movement into the digital world of food. And I think a lot of people learned that cheese is good on everything, and they put cheese on everything because you kept running out of it at the stores.
Scott, I think one of the enduring memories, the e-commerce point that Chad mentioned, I'm a bit of a grocery store nerd. I suppose as part of the job, I like to go and see what's out of stock, what's in stock, what's on sale. So I've just never really dove into that. And I remember in the early days of the pandemic, looking through the meat aisle and seeing, whole briskets and gigantic beef tenderloins for sale because they didn't have a restaurant to sell them to. Go to the dairy aisle and we see 5 and 10 pound bags of shredded cheddar cheese. I imagine that was a bit of a food service reaction due to the lack of a customer, but what did those early months and the months that followed teach us about the agility or perhaps the lack thereof of the supply chain and dairy in particular?
Yeah, so if you look at, I think what is being pointed out is, number one, we have a complex supply chain. It's liquid, multi-component, it's perishable, it's heavily regulated, it's got specialized haulers that need sampling licenses, et cetera. So you start moving that complexity into COVID and into consumer, changing preferences of a consumer. And I think what it did is it amplified that maybe the more traditional ways that we run the supply chain, whether that be on paper or information moving a little bit more slowly. And so for us and for our business, and really we have software that manages the full life cycle of milk through that supply chain. Those that were more digital could respond, they could communicate, maybe they had better data that helped them to set the right freight rates to ensure that hauling was in place. Maybe they had digital views into their plants where they could more quickly make decisions. But it didn't change the fact that consumer preferences were moving from food service to retail. Packaging wasn't equipped for that shift. So I think for the first couple of months, it was kind of shock and awe. What do we do? How is it going to impact not only at retail, but through the entirety of the supply chain, through the hauling sector, through the how you manage a plant, labor, COVID issues. So I think it just really amplified, and there was a lot of fear. What's going to happen? Freight rates initially actually dropped. What we saw though over the next, call it May 2020 to May 2021, once everything normalized, then we started seeing some of the issues of drivers couldn't get trucks, so equipment was aging, higher maintenance, less labor, driver shortages. So a lot of this started to amplify, through that period. And so I think just end to end, we saw just tremendous disruption and probably a recognition that we as an industry need to be better prepared for COVID type disruptions and consumer preference changes that are happening.
But it's one thing to say that we need to be better prepared. It's another thing to actually be better prepared. So what are the steps that you are hearing being encouraged at this point?
So I think because of the complexity of the supply chain, I think sometimes what happens is, well, my little change to digitize, for example, isn't going to have an impact. And so what happens is that we don't make some of those changes, or they're complicated to make. Or as a producer, you say, well, I can make changes, but is my co-op or handler making the right changes, and is the manufacturing facility? And so we have a tendency to maybe retreat and say, I'm just going to kind of do what I do the way I've always done it. And so I think there are a slew of new technologies that are emerging, but I think as an industry, we have to better connect, okay, how do these all fit? Who's going to pay for them, which I know is another big issue. What's the ultimate use case? You know, so we hear a consumer wants to know where their food comes from. Are they going to pay for that? Then how is that going to get monetized for the changes through the supply chain? So I think there's a lot of industry wrestling that needs to take place, but the strong encouragement I would have to this group is, you know, for 20 years, we've been committed to lean, efficient, real-time digital supply chains are going to win into the future. And you've got to be making steps, whether it's on the farm, a hauling company, a manufacturer, at the retail level. We have to, places where you can make those incremental digital changes, and I would focus on accelerate data and get it into an open format where you can share. Because, you know, there's a lot of, and I know we'll probably hit on it at some point, a lot of question around, well, will blockchain be a part of this? Or I would step away from that and focus on data readiness, data accessibility, being able to accelerate the flow and capture as much as you can digitally, because that's going to be what's important for consumer preferences. That's what's going to be important when these huge disruptions hit us, that you're agile, you can communicate quickly, and you can make those changes as needed.
So, I mean, it seems as if we're preparing for a world where, you know, the custard that Craig serves me is going to come with a picture of the farmer that milked it. I'm sure that, you know, that prospect probably concerns some people. It sounds like a lot of overhead, a lot of heavy lifting, but are there steps to be taken to kind of get folks on that path?
Yeah, and I think probably it starts with, you know, again, you are representatives of your co-op or the handler that takes your milk, is being a voice to say we need to be progressive, we need to move forward, we need to advance these initiatives. I know there are DMI, others that have been involved in these data strategies, but I think it's a voice of saying, you know, our little piece isn't going to have the entire impact, but we need to progress forward, because undoubtedly, even today, we have clients that can digitally real-time track and trace from a pallet of product back to the farm that it came from with tools that are available today.
Chad, what are we hearing from the consumer on this in terms of their level of interest and their level of specificity that they're going to be looking for on the transparency of their markets?
Well, I love your question about it. Are they going to pay for it, right? Because they want it, and I think that they'll be drawn like flies towards those that provide it, and those that provide it hopefully will price it into that model. So it's like, hey, if you want to understand exactly where this stuff comes from all the way back, at least up front, let's make sure that there's a value placed on that. They do, I mean, and it's across the board, right? So this isn't you know, every single consumer, but the younger they are, the more they want to know, you know, what farms are these coming from, and are they you know, what are their practices, and what is are they taking steps to make sure that the water is clean, that the air is clean, and that they're leaving the land better than it was before, right? And so we all know that that's happening, right? We know that that's the truth, and the more that you guys, you know, we're actually bringing farmers out to tell these stories because it's critical. And you know, back to your point, you know, I was talking to a lot of cheese companies and dairy companies last week, getting prepared for this, and I asked them about, well, what are you doing about, you know, transparency and making sure that consumers understand exactly where the products come from? They're like, look, right now, we understand it's there, but for the most part, right now, I'm trying to find somebody to work the first shift to keep the plant running, right? But they also say that if there's a recall, right, we do recall, you know, tests once a month, and you know, some of the mid-sized cheese companies even can go from a spoiled piece of cheese on a shelf back to the farm in under 2 hours. So that's where they're like, we have to be able to do that. This other stuff, we understand it's coming, but it's not right now. It's not. We're in struggle for growth, struggle for operational efficiency, and keeping the lights on every day. But they understand that this stuff is coming. I can't tell you how far down the chain and how many people really, but you have to understand that door has been opened, And the younger consumers who are now going to be the largest purchasing group in the country are going to want it. And we have to be ready for it.
Well, and you mentioned in an earlier response too, in that, you know, COVID sped up a lot of things. You know, things that we thought as an industry were going to take 5 years, took 5 months. Is this in that same accord? I mean, where not only the consumer demand for it, but the company efforts to make that transparency happen being sped up so rapidly?
Actually, I think COVID slowed it down a little bit. Right?
Okay.
I think COVID made people. There's still that core of people that are gonna drive for that, but I think it's a very small core today. And because what we found is that when things get hard and you've got time, you don't have time to sit around and ponder the universe. You worry about day-to-day activities and how am I going to make lunch and how am I going to make this stuff. But this too shall pass, and they're going to go back into that mode, and it's going to be it's in their core DNA to make the world a better place by their choices of what they buy and what they eat.
Mm-hmm. Craig, as someone who's running one of these companies that we're talking about, what are you hearing from your consumer in terms of their interest in the transparency and the traceability of the products that you're serving them?
The youth would be more interested than our more senior customers. But going back, you know, I remember one of our competitors 4 or 5 years ago that really got caught. They didn't have control of their supply chain. Their individual stores, the restaurants were going out locally and doing this and that and buying stuff. And they had, you know, if there was an issue, they had no idea where to go. And that's why control of your supply chain is so crucial. And it's difficult, you know, with somebody with a lot of restaurants. With an independent restaurant, one independent restaurant, it's pretty easy to do. You can find out where your milk is coming from and those tomatoes and the lettuce and so on and so forth. But when you have 845 restaurants, well, that's a little bit more difficult. You want to know who the supplier is and when that product was manufactured, and that's always on the boxes and stuff, so we can track it back to that if there is a recall. But you know, I like to think of us as a small independent restaurant. I really do. That's how we started, and that's still my mindset yet today. Yet we have a lot of restaurants, and but we want as much control as we possibly can. So when somebody goes to one restaurant, that Butterburger is going to taste like the one in Sauk City, and otherwise, if everybody's helter-skelter, you just have no controls, and food safety becomes a real issue as well.
Well, and I don't want to put you too far on this.
Although our custard mix does come from one cow in Appleton, Wisconsin. That's a joke.
I don't want to put you too far on the spot here in terms of the pricing of your products, but you know, the who's going to pay for it question. I just have to wonder, does it make you a little bit nervous to think about pricing up some of your products, potentially pricing yourself out of competition, or is there the benefit there that based on your consumer feedback that you think that you're going to get maybe a different set of consumers because you're providing that information?
I do think there's a benefit. I do. But if you're going to, I've always said this, if you're going to charge more for your products, you also better be serving it with a please and a thank you and a smile that comes from the heart along with that product. People don't want to be served something that there's no hospitality behind it. And honestly, it's easy to buy good products, it is, and charge accordingly. But if you're not serving them to create a good experience, then I think you're going to lose in the end.
Mm-hmm. We talked about this a little bit with Chad, but I'd be curious to hear, in your mind and in your industry, what changes did the COVID pandemic and the accompanying supply chain issues, what changes did that accelerate in your line of work?
The importance of keeping your people. That's what it, and everybody is so struggling in that area. Still yet today, we do have a few closed dining rooms when there's issues, but our competitors, I mean, we're taking advantage of it. We're stealing market share from them. Yesterday I saw where two of our competitors are shortening. I mean, these are major players, and they're shortening hours in their restaurants. We want to stay open, and we want to be open on time, and we want to stay open throughout the whole day, and we want to treat our guests as if they're, their family coming into our restaurants.
Scott, both Craig and Chad have discussed the labor issue of the supply chain crisis. How do the technology solutions that you discuss on a regular basis kind of intersect with that reality of the fact that somebody's got to be there, and if nothing else, to turn the switch on? I mean, how does the labor and the technology meet in your mind?
Yeah, I mean, I think, so look at hauling, dairy hauling. So picking up off the farm, delivering to the plant. You don't want to do a lot of waiting at the farm. You don't want to do a lot of waiting at the plant. So good data to bring that about makes that hauling job better than if you show up at a plant and, you wait for hours upon hours upon hours. And so data flow, scheduling activities, that's just a small example of saying, part of the driver shortage is, hey, I can go stay local, drive at Uber, and I don't have to put up with a lot of this stuff. And so we've done a lot of work with just the right technologies, the right pay prices to the hauling companies so they can attract labor to ensure that we have a steady workforce underneath those loads. Driving shorter distances, right? Optimizing your milk shed, not having just whipsaws in the supply chain. Now, you can't stop a COVID. There's going to be certain things that no matter how well you prepare, you're going to have major disruptions. But same thing with a plant. If you have a lot of redundant work, so digital handoff of that load into the plant, tools that help them better optimize and use milk through a plant, those are all tools, more of an information worker, less of a redundant, I'm just kind of managing, doing redundant data entry at a bay or whatever that is. So I think it's not going to solve some of the more macro labor issues that we see, but I think being a friendly company to work with, paying the right structures, and efficiently using the materials through the supply chain all contribute to kind of retaining some of the labor that we need. And then I think, of course, you're going to see, as it relates to technology, kind of generally speaking, robotics, more machine learning, things where you need just less human interaction at different parts of the supply chain.
And that was going to be my next question, because it seems as if any time that we hear just the concept of labor issues in one sentence, the next sentence usually involves the concept of automation. But is that something that is graspable to the majority of the industry right now? Is it still priced at a point that just is not really effective for a number of folks?
Yeah, I mean, and again, that's back to the key issue of, do I invest ahead of it? Is it the right time? Do I keep throwing labor at it? But I think you've seen on-farm robotics that I think have been, there's broader adoption of that. Through the manufacturing process, you're seeing more and more automation at palletizing, things like that. So I think the cost benefit has been proven in these places. But of course, there's some of the newer technologies we're seeing, computer vision. So instead of having labor that are looking at the lameness of an animal, or kind of, is there enough feed in the stall? Things of that nature are emerging, but they're still a bit expensive. Is the ROI there? There's IoT type devices that are measuring more of the kind of the feed consumption. Places where maybe we had blind spots in the past. Those are emerging, but you've got to make that investment. And I think that's really that's some of the resistance in being able to move forward is, am I going to get a return on this? Is it going to be paid for downstream in the supply chain? So sometimes it slows progress.
Chad, in the conversations that you have throughout the industry, whether it's the technology that Scott mentioned, the hospitality that Craig mentioned, right, are we better prepared to go through this again in the hopefully unlikely event that we do? Are we better prepared now for a future supply chain crisis?
Absolutely, and whether it's a supply chain crisis or whatever, we know the next crisis is going to come. We know that stuff is going to, bad things are going to happen to upset our industry and upset the way things flow. Now, talking to a lot of the cheese processors in the state, I asked them, well, what about robotics? What are you guys doing? And they're like, look, right now, it's hard. I mean, what used to be able to order a robot to pick up a pallet from here and move it to here, it used to take maybe a month or two, and now it's like 6-8 months, if you can get it. On the converse side, though, is I spent 10 years with a cheese company, and we started dabbling with robots in the plants back then. The hardest part was getting it in, but then you had to have a programmer that was on site that could go, okay, I need it to lift its arm up, grab this, move it 6 inches, and it's like, okay, that takes a month, right? And he goes, now the robots come with screens, and you go and you mirror, you go, I want you to go this to there, and it goes, and all of a sudden, you don't have a programmer or that labor or that delay. So there are robotics within the manufacturing process are going to take, and the smart ones and the folks with capital are getting ahead of the curve because they realize that this labor thing, this is not a short-term thing. This is a forever thing. It's hard to find people and you're fortunate when you have people like this that actually understand the value of labor and treat them well. In a lot of the plants, historically, has not been the case. And so these people are like, you threw me out, now you want me back. Am I really, is the next time somebody has a cold, you're gonna shut everybody down and send us home for a month? They want stability and the ability to put food on their plate and manage their family as much as anybody else. So yeah, the robotics thing is gonna happen, and it is happening. And I think that it's going to make, I think the conversations I had with everybody that I spoke to is a lot smarter today than they were a year ago. The way that I was talking with Lee Kennard back here before this started, and we're like, about suppliers. There are, the cheese companies have, I use this kind of cryovac or this kind of plastic to wrap my cheese, and I've been using it for 20 years, and they're awesome, but guess what? Now I can't get it for a week, and I have to shut down. So they're like, if you can't get it, if you can't prove to me that you're going to be able to handle my business, I'm now multi-sourcing, right? I may pay a little bit more, but I'm going to make sure I have it. And the other thing Lee said was, yeah, on the converse side is when you have those people that deliver and they break their back and they know how important it is to you and they did whatever it is that had to happen and they delivered, guess what? I'm doubling down and I'm never going to forget that and I'm never going to leave you. Mm-hmm. So they are thinking ahead as much as time permits because they're still trying to keep the plants open to make sure that they can cake the milk and process it.
Folks, I'm a reporter. I can ask questions all day, but I want to get you involved in the conversation as well. I think we've got a couple of microphones down front. By all means, feel free to come on down and would welcome your thoughts. But in lieu of that for now, and for those of us joining us virtually, I can see the questions that get submitted on my phone, so would encourage you to take part in the conversation as well. Craig, I noticed when Chad said this labor issue is not a short-term one, you kind of sat up in agreement there. Walk me through that. Your thought process on labor and
labor was an issue before this started.
Yeah,
I mean it's been an issue for a long time. Which reminds me, or I think of immigration. We have got to get a legalized immigration program in America. We need whether it's Mexicans, El Salvadorans, we need them. I know we do, and they're wonderful people as well. And we got to find a way so they're not crossing a river someplace, but they're coming to America legally. And I fully endorse that. Yeah, this labor thing has been around for a while. This just made it a lot bigger thing than what it was. And as far as wages, well, you saw, what was it, a few years ago, and everybody's saying we got to have $15 an hour. Guess what? We got $15 and then some. One of our restaurants right here in town put an ad for $20 an hour, and she didn't get a single person to apply. I never dreamt. $20 an hour. I remember getting paid 50 cents an hour. So, that's a living wage in my opinion, and that's for a crew member, not a manager. But so we're paying, we're doing that, and still having a difficult time attracting labor.
Well, and we talk about automation up here. I imagine there are certain jobs in your establishments that really can't be automated. I imagine some can, but there's a limit to what the
Well,
technology
there's some
can
things
do
I
for
just
you.
don't want to be. I want our grill people, I want that burger made by an artisan. You know, really, it's a skilled position. And I just can't imagine a robot making the butter burger. That just turns, it just turns me the wrong way. And but there are things, as Scott was saying, before COVID, we were so ill prepared with technology. We didn't have online ordering ready to go. We didn't have the ability to take tablets outside in the drive-through line and take orders there, and they come right inside to the grill area. We were just way behind. COVID has pushed us to get those things in place, and we have got those in place. We didn't have double drive-throughs prior to COVID. Again, COVID drove that as well. And now all our new restaurants are opening with double drives, and we've got to have these things. So in many ways, it was good for us, but boy, I don't want to go through it again, not to the severity it was. But we're still there, aren't we? We got Omicron to concern us a little bit right now.
Scott, a lot of the conversation that we're talking about seems to involve, some technology at the, at the producer level to a certain extent, but a lot of it is at the processor level. But for John Q. dairy producer, what are some things they can do to improve the ability of the industry to be more traceable?
So, I think one of the trends we've seen over the last couple of years is, on farm, there's a lot of data in your farm management system, maybe your herd management system, in the parlor. There's data that exists, but I call it really data readiness or preparedness, just being in a position, and of course it's got to be governed by the right. We've adopted a kind of a standard called Ag Data Transparent that says you as the producer choose what you want to do with that data. But nonetheless, because I know there's a lot of, if a consumer wants to scan a code, do I really want to share that? Do I want to be revealing things about my operation? But as Chad said, it's coming like a freight train, this transparency and visibility. And so I think on farm, I would just encourage, there are tools that are available. We provision a tool called My Dairy Dashboard that pulls together a lot of that data, can assimilate it, and then we can tie that to beyond the farm gate, as the loads move downstream. And so our software helps, for lack of a better term, stamp that milk. Is it non-GMO? Is it organic? Is it grass-fed? And so being able to track those attributes through the supply chain starts at the farm. And I think increasingly there's going to be a reaching into, is it a happy cow? Is it a sustainable milk? Is it those attributes, due to these consumer changes, they're going to be more prevalent.
It's not a happy cow today. It's colder than hell out there.
Hey, I flew in from Dallas, and this was an eye opener to see ice skaters out there.
Go Cowboys.
Yeah, let's not talk about that now.
Yeah. Well, and a question was submitted online for Scott, but I'd honestly like the thoughts of all three of you on this. As we look forward, think about the lessons that we've learned in the last 22 months roughly, and kind of project what things are realistically achievable in the next 5 to 10 years. What does the supply chain, the transparency that we've discussed, the consumer preferences that we've discussed, where are we at in 5 or 10 years, and what can we do today to kind of start us on the path to get there? And Scott, I'll start with you.
Yeah, and I've mentioned some of these. So on the good news front, there are a lot of kind of digital systems that are either today capturing the data or managing that data. I mean, we kind of saw that cycle over the last 20 years, that most operations, so a cooperative back office operation, has some form of digital records, and ERP systems are more prevalent. But I think a lot of what you're going to see is the openness of those systems, the connectivity of the data. And so I think it's an orientation towards, can I accelerate the capture of that data? Can I do it either through a device or a mobile phone, whatever it is? So it's not a paper ticket for a manifest anymore. It's a phone, or maybe it's some automated data collection unit on the back of a truck. There are tools that can accelerate data, but accelerating data flow and making it readiness for, we don't know, will it be this platform or that platform? Will Walmart ask for it? We may not know the winner, but taking steps, you already have digital solutions, ensuring that you're advancing those, that you're making the right decisions for that data to be open and connected, I think is some of the biggest change that we'll see over the next 4 or 5 years, because at the end of the day, we have to be able to track the genealogy and connect some of these siloed data sets. I think we'll see a major transformation on that front.
Chad?
Yeah, so to me, taking it back to the farm, there's been a lot of lessons learned over the last, not only the last 2 years, but the last 5 or 10. And if I was a farmer, knowing what I know and talking to people that I talk to and living in the world that I do, the vast majority of farmers that I've run across do treat the animals well. They do treat the planet well, and they do treat, they make sure the water and the air and that the land that they're working is better off today than it was yesterday, because they're planning on having their kids in the next generation, and they want that to be as good or better as it possibly can. That's critical. And being able to, make sure that you are taking this stuff seriously. This environmental stuff, it's not going away either, and it's only going to get more and more spotlights put on it. So I would make sure that you are up to speed. If I was a farmer, I'd make sure that I am very up to speed on good for the animals, good for the planet, and good for the community, and work that. The other thing is I would make sure is, and talking again to a lot of farmers in the last couple of years is, when COVID hit, some of us were pouring milk out, right? So, and that's unacceptable. So if I'm a farmer, I'm like, how often am I talking to the person that picks up my milk and takes it at the end of the driveway? And what's happening to it after that? Is my processor in a growth mode or not? Right? Because if they're not in a growth mode and I am, that's a problem. And if they're in a growth mode and I'm not, am I going to be left behind, or am I okay? Do they have problems filling the second shift, and should I be worried about someday that I might get the call that says, I can't take your milk. Can't take it, because I can't take it, and I can't move it to the guy next door or the guys that I usually give it to, because they're all full too. What's my plan B? What's my plan C? Because it's not like 5 years ago when I could call up and say, I don't like my processor. Will you give me another nickel and you can have my milk? Those days, I would be awesome if they came back, but I don't see it. So how am I going to make sure that I understand what's happening at the end of my farm gate and become much more aware of that for the survival and the thrival of my operation?
Oh, first of all, we got to get back to some normalcy. We got to get back to that point at some time. And I think just-in-time manufacturing and just-in-time ordering, like in our restaurants, is going to be thrown out the window for a while, especially when it comes to paper products, things that don't go bad. But the other thing, though, I think that's really important is working with our suppliers, our key suppliers, all areas of our restaurant, whether it's building products or food products, and giving them good projections on what we think we're going to do for that particular year. I know a lot of people usually over-project, some under-project, but being accurate on your projections so the suppliers can prepare for the year. So we can have this many HVAC units ready to go for us, or fryers, or grills, or what have you, or our potato manufacturer is kept up to date on how many restaurants we're going to open this year and what we're going to use. So communication is key, I believe, it's always been key.
Yep.
But as we go into the future, it's going to become even more key. And hopefully, labor does normalize as well along the way. Mm-hmm. It's very stressful on our restaurants, and for not just the restaurant industry or us, but everybody when, business is good. I mean, business is really good. Yet you're short of labor, and that stresses people out. Mm-hmm. And that's not good for anybody. So hopefully that normalizes over the years. Yet I don't necessarily see it happening.
Yeah. Well, folks, we've got about 10 minutes left here, and I do know we've got a question in the audience. My only request from our audience questions, please give us your name and your role in the industry so these gentlemen have a better idea.
Hi, I'm Chris Grunenfelder. I'm a dairy farmer just southwest of here, and I have 5 kids, and they're little. So, Craig, I think we single-handedly helped you out on that 18% last year growth.
Are they old enough to work yet?
No, well, my oldest is 9, so not quite yet. And actually, Craig, I used to serve your mom and dad, George and Ruth, at Green Acres back in the day. So my question is, when are you bringing back the ketchup packets that you can dip in?
Well, talk to Heinz. He's a former Heinz guy. There you go. That's another supply chain thing that we just can't get them. And I hate the packets as much as you do. Yeah. But they are cheaper than those other things are. But in time, I'm not sure when.
Yeah, but if you talk to Heinz, it's like, it's probably not the ketchup, right? How do I get the packets?
The ketchup.
Right. How do I get the packets? How do I get the film that goes over it?
Yeah.
How do I have people online? How do I get enough people to actually run the line?
Yep.
Because you're probably not the only one who wants those.
No, I'm sure we're not.
Right. So this is the kind of, we had somebody asking earlier today about supply chain, and they're like, what is Chekhov doing about fixing the supply chain stuff? And look, we can do a lot of things, and when we find about issues, we'll address it. But there's nobody up here that can fix this stuff single-handedly, or we're all part of this thing, and everybody's going to feel the pain for a while.
Yeah, they have the ketchup. They don't have the packaging.
Looks like we've got another question there toward the middle of the room.
Hi, Mitch Breinig, dairy farmer from Sauk City. So, Craig, I was in your store when it was the first Culvers, so it was pretty cool. My question is for Craig. As you look at labor shortages and technology, how do you think about moving to the non-interactive ordering where people walk into your store and just order? One of the best parts about Culvers, I think, is the interaction with your employees.
I totally agree with you. Yet we have looked at kiosks in the past, and younger people will use them. The more senior people generally will just they're afraid of them, as I am. When I go to a grocery store, I don't use the self-checkout or the hardware store or whatever, but you can bet they'll come more in play as we go into the future. Coca-Cola came out with, I forget what they call it, but it's the machine you can put freestanding or something like that. And we looked at it when Pepsi brought it to us as well. And what I found, we put it in tests, and what I found out, people would stand there for minutes, figuring out what they're gonna, come on, we gotta keep going. And plus, the restaurants would have to put an attendant out there to help everybody through the line to teach them how to use the machine. So, I love the interaction of people as well, and I hope we stay that way. I really believe this, that it will be a competitive edge for us if we remain, eyeball to eyeball, because I think most of our competitors are going to drift the other direction.
I think we had another question in that same neighborhood there.
My name is Megan Salentine, and I'm a dairy farmer's daughter from just east of Green Bay. I thought that October 15th was going to be the most amazing day because I was going to get a curd burger, and my location was sold out at 12:15 when I showed up. So my question for you, Craig, is that coming back so I can get one?
We haven't determined that yet. But if we do, we're going to have more than what we had this time around. So that was the second busiest day Culvers has ever had, just because of that silly curd burger.
What was the first?
It was a Friday some time ago. I don't know.
That's amazing.
It was a busy day.
Just goes to show an April Fool's tweet can turn to an actual product. Who knew?
You know the story, yeah.
And other questions? We've got a few minutes left here. Probably time for one or two more.
By the way, show them that drink again. This is one of the most innovative things. Michelle, are you out there? One of the most innovative things I've seen in the dairy industry in like many years. I think this is pretty cool.
Yeah, so this is Michelle was the founder of Good Sport, coming soon to Festival. It is a whey permeate product that has better hydration and performance capabilities than does the other competitors that are out there. So we're hoping that, once again, taking another piece of dairy, adding more value, innovation. Dairy Farmers of Wisconsin and your checkoff funds a lot of Center for Dairy Research, and Center for Dairy Research was at the center of making this product come true.
Yeah, you owe us.
Yeah.
So absent
Good stuff.
absent another audience question, I'll take a moderator's prerogative and take the last one here, and it's a question I'll ask for all three of you. And in the interest of time, looking for responses 30 seconds or less here. Craig, I'm going to start with you, and we'll work down the line and end with Scott. Tell me the one thing that's top of your mind when it comes to supply chain and supply chain reliability in the next 365 days. What are you most watching between now and a year from today?
Just as I was saying, just some normalization. Our supply chain team, they're stressed. They are. They're going through a lot, and I don't like seeing that. I don't like seeing them stressed out. I want some, like I said, normalization, and hopefully getting back to that.
I'm watching people and the labor, right? We've got to figure out everybody's got to be looking at who do they have, who do you actually have to keep, and how do you attract and retain talent. To me, that's going to be the critical component for, regardless of where you are in supply chains, people.
Yeah, and I think in conjunction with that, a close eye to the kind of the driver shortage, the hauling, because it's, we're hauling specialized, liquid products. And so I think just, we see spot loads on our exchange that just go uncovered because there's just no way to move the product around. So I think watching that whole logistics, focusing in on that piece of it. And one thing, we do have an ebook just around this entire, kind of the dairy value chain. If you go to dairy.com/dairy strong, it's a free ebook, and it gives you kind of in each segment of the supply chain, some things to be thinking about, preparing for as you look at, like you said, the next few years of how do we improve based on what we've learned.
Well, and I think it's interesting, just wrapping up here, we have conversations about blockchain technology and about traceability and about consumer preferences and all these different forms. And all three of you, in some form or fashion in your response there, mentioned people. And that at some point this is all going to come down to people. And the people that are working, the people that are doing the purchasing, the people that are stressed about doing the purchasing, it's all going to come down to people. And folks, if you could join me in thanking these three people for their insights here today.
Great job.
Gentlemen?
Yeah.
They're stressed because they care.
Yes, they're stressed because they care. Very good. Thank you, gentlemen.